Hi, I'm Mary Brooks Green, the National Accounts and Program Manager for High Points Learning. We are a web-based 24/7 math intervention offering math services for students grades 2 through 12. This program allows for remediation as well as acceleration. You're about to hear some first-hand accounts from a teacher locally here in Georgia who has utilized this program and realized the success with the students firsthand. We would like to share with you Ms. Fontane's results and how she feels about High Points Learning in terms of the students' performance, test scores, GPS, and Common Core standards. Take a listen.
Absolutely. They have, because the way they would do it instead of being CRCT based is it would be end of course based. So they would take a pre-test or a pre-assessment, and then it would say, okay, what standards correlated to the math you've already had? Have you had Algebra 1? Are you in Math 1? Are you in Geometry? GPS, they've changed the Common Core GPS to Math 2 for high school. So some of those are transition standards that are going to come from one grade to the next. So it'll let the teacher and the student know, okay, these are the skills you have mastered and maintained. These are the ones that you should have mastered and maintain them and you're not. So it's going to support that aspect, but it would also support them going forward towards EOCT because it would go back and do a spiral review. So for example, if they did their pre-assessment and they haven't learned a certain scope and sequence yet, well, now they're getting towards the end of the school. Well, that program goes back and automatically works with them on those strands going forward to EOCT. So they all have to take an end of course test. So I think it would be extremely beneficial. The pre-assessment helps the teacher to go back and know that that's the piece of concepts that they don't know. The computer will work on those and keep giving them pre and post test data, but the teacher can also use the tutorial program with them, but also know, hey, I need to go in, let me see, I'm going to do some remediation and reteaching on this concept for this student. Now let me see how they do the next time they go and work on this on High Points. So it definitely trans back and forth, and then it transfers that data for the teacher instead of the teacher having to collect all the data herself.
Looks like.
So what the platform would look like is the student would come in and take a pre-assessment based on the standards that they're going to be tested on this year. Then the teacher or teachers or whoever is going to be working with those students gets that data analysis feedback. It says where they were strong on this strand, what strand did they have areas of weakness that we need to improve upon. And then you can share that information with the students too, because that helps with goal setting. So that's the first piece. Then what we do is we set up a systematic structured time where students have time at school to work on the program. It's better if they work on school because then they're kind of supervised, but they're motivated, and some students are more motivated than others to do things additional outside of school. So when we set that up, students will log in. Well, the computer system has already analyzed all their data. So High Points comes in and says, okay, well, this was an area you were good on. So they give them a little pretest. And I noticed this, I could see it in the program, it always built on success first. So they would be like, pet section was easy. I got 10 out of 10. I did this. And then they're all confident. And then so when they got to it would build to a little harder section of that concept. And so then they got there, when they got stuck, they're like, well, what can I do? How can I figure this out? Because I want to get that end result of being successful. So they would use the little tutorial tool, or they'd even raise their hand and say, hey, can you come over here and explain this to me? And then you can explain it to them using the tutorial guide that's in High Points. But one student might be working on fractions and another student might be working on percents or ratios. But because they've all got their own individualized plan, they're working on the specific areas of weakness that they need. But as a teacher, you don't have to have 30 different lesson plans to differentiate. The machine is differentiating, the computer program is differentiating for you, and then you're there to provide the academic support, the speak to, what are you doing, the help them to visualize and understand what they're reading and translating that. So it differentiates and gives that individualized instruction based on their areas, and then it keeps going on. So it knows once they've mastered one area, okay, now we're going to move on to the next area. They had to master this area to build on to the next area. So it is a building program, and if not, it just keeps putting it back in front of their face, but in a different way, which is good because that repetition is like dribbling a basketball. It's the skills, the fundamentals that move us to that next level.
Okay. remediation part?
Well, I think the remediation part is excellent in the fact that it is looking at what specific each child needs remediation in. It's not a blanket thing. Okay, we've got 30 kids, 75% of us need to work on solving two-step equations. No, this child needs to work on two-step equations. This child might need to work on slope. This child might need to work on ratio and proportion. This child might need to work on geometry. So with the remediation piece, it looks at their individual strand that they need support in, and then the computer program already automatically prompts them to work on that strand. So that's how you're differentiating, remediating their specific area of weakness, but also providing review for things that they have skills to maintain or already mastered. The computer program, it's a support for review, remediation, and moving forward, even previewing some of the topics that are coming based on the pre-assessment, because they may not have ever had those skills introduced, so they're going to get to see those. But then when they're practicing on their test-taking skills, looking at those questions, looking at the verbiage, how do I eliminate questions, and they're stuck, they've got that little hint tutorial. It definitely cannot replace the teacher. Biggest thing is it's not set up or designed to be providing direct instruction. It's designed to provide support. So there's no way it could replace the teacher. Well, transparency is huge between business and schools. I mean, you have to be transparent. People need to know what's going on. And I think it helps support when you look at a program, you can say, this is where your child was and this is where we've gotten to. Even if they're not meeting the state benchmark, if you can see improvement from where they were to where they are, even though we're trying to get them to a higher state benchmark, it is being transparent. You're showing very specifically where you've helped to target that student, how you've given them support, how they've gotten remediation from school, but now they also have independent practice because students have to be able to at some point apply their mathematical knowledge on their own. So I do think that parents having access to that data, then we have access to that data, then the principal has access to the data, you can share it with the district. It provides a lot of transparency and a lot of community stakeholder involvement and communication, and all of those things are key. The program was everyone that was going to participate came in and took a baseline assessment, and it was grade level based, so it was based on the standards that they would be tested on that school year. But within that, that also builds on the standards from the previous year. So we had a baseline assessment of saying where they were, and then we knew where we wanted to get them to. And I would say overall, all the students were successful. And what they had was a blend of additional math support, direct instruction, remediation, tutorial from a teacher. Then they had the practice and review and extra additional support from High Points. So I think the two things coupled together is what boosted our score. So not one by itself, but working as a team. So we had probably about last year one of our highest numbers of special education students pass CRCT, which was, I was going to say about 75 to 78% of those students passed. Our regular education students, the number was even higher. I want to say we were probably school-wide for all math students, we were right around 97% across the board, which was statistically significant from where we had been in the past, coming from 93, 95, 94% to 97 to 98 on those. And then when you still looked at our subgroups, when you looked at our impoverished students, students with disabilities, transient students, all of those subgroup numbers came up. We at one point were at 67% for special education. I think we moved up to 85%. And what we also saw was students that didn't pass the first time they attempted the test within the 8th grade standards, the success rate by going back and doing some more review and remediation was even greater on the second attempt.